Welcome to the Register's Report. My name is John Buckley. This show's about Plymouth County real estate. This is my 161st show here at Brockton Cable Access Television. We're going to be talking about some of the recordings in February. This show's being taped in March. Our headline for the month in our newsletter was, "The spring market is on its way, hopefully." So we're going to go right to the numbers. And you're going to see first deeds, which are sales of property. You're going to see a bar chart. There are 418 deeds recorded in February of this year, more than the 414 last year, 8% over last year's recording. You're going to see a listing of all the sales for the 27 communities of Plymouth County, from Abington to Whitman. And as you look at the list, you'll see Plymouth and Brockton have the largest number of sales, but obviously every one of the communities show activity. You're going to see a bar chart of mortgages. Mortgages have been very, very low since the interest rates went up. The refinances dropped out. There were 818 mortgages recorded in February, slightly more than the 816 in January of 2024, and more than the 703 mortgages in February of last year. We're going to go to foreclosure deeds. A foreclosure deed is when someone has taken over the property, a lender usually, and usually for non-payment. There were 18 foreclosure deeds across Plymouth County in February of this year, more than the 16 foreclosure deeds in January, and more than the 9 in February last year, up 79%. And a lot of that is affected because during our COVID crisis, there was a moratorium on foreclosures, both foreclosure deeds and notices. So banks are just catching up. And as I mentioned the word foreclosure notice, a foreclosure notice is the first instrument we receive at the Registry of Deeds that notifies somebody's in trouble. They're starting the foreclosure process. If you're in trouble, don't hesitate. Reach out to a federal housing council like NeighborWorks. There were 51 foreclosure notices in February of this year, more than the 50 in January, and up from the 42 in February of last year. And I'm going to give you a listing of all the foreclosure deeds and notices for the 27 communities of Plymouth County, and you'll still see a lot of zeros there. But please note, there are 11 order of notices in the town of Plymouth, and 9 in Brockton. So for those families that are facing that difficulty, again, don't hesitate. Reach out to a federal housing counselor. So a couple quick things. If you're concerned about fraud, go to our website, PlymouthDeeds.org. Go to the notices section, and you'll see something that says fraud alert. If you click on that and enter your email, any document that gets recorded against you, you'll get an email saying a document's been recorded. And you can proactively look and make sure it's something that should have gone on record, like a mortgage discharge or something more troublesome. So it's a good way to keep track of your own property. We're working on transcriptions of our property, all our deeds, many beautiful handwritten deeds, and we're already up to 1868 and continuing. And I have a great guest coming on in the second segment of the show, Nancy Doyle of Caldwell-Baker Realty of Easton and the great town of Marion in Plymouth County. So we'll see you in the next segment. Welcome back to the Register's Report. My name is John Buckley. I'm the Register of Deeds of Plymouth County. I have a great guest on this show. This show, we usually try to do something informational in nature. I've had surveyors, appraisers, home inspectors, everyone involved in the real estate community. But we've had a lot of realtors along the way, because realtors are the people that are on the ground and they know exactly what's happening minute by minute. So my guest today is Nancy Doyle with Caldwell-Baker Realty. So welcome. Thank you for being on the show.
John, thank you so much for having me. I'm a little excited.
So first, why don't we tell our viewers a little bit about yourself and how you ended up as a realtor?
Wow. I started back in 2003. My kids had just reached that age where they were a little bit self-sustaining, so I could kind of leave them here and there, and I've been doing it since. I have a bit of a background in the trades. My family was in the trades. My first few jobs were, in the office, but in the trades.
Which trades?
Family were tin knockers, sheet metal workers.
Sure.
And then I worked for, I was just saying to you, I worked for Cochran Supply. That was my very first real job in downtown Brockton.
They were a big company at one time.
They were huge. They were huge. And then I worked for a drywall company. My official job title was Chick in the Office. Loved that. Best job title ever.
Yeah.
So, going into homes was kind of that next step, So I understand homes and construction, and so I've been doing it for 20 years. About 10 years ago, my son decided to join me, which has been great.
What's his name?
Bo.
Okay,
Bo Waldron.
Good.
And it's wonderful, after I was able to open up to it, to get that perspective of a 30 or 20-something-year-old male versus a woman of that age, So sometimes it's really good. Yeah,
Experience.
Exactly. So yeah.
That's great. And why don't we tell our viewers a little bit about your company?
So Caldwell-Baker has been around
Right.
since the earthquake in San Francisco in 1906.
Wow.
And it was initially started because during the earthquake they were watching a lot of people get taken advantage of because they didn't know what to do. Suddenly their home is destroyed, and they were, we had predators even back then, and
Sure.
people would walk over and say, oh, don't worry about it, here, sign here and I'll take care of everything.
Right.
And so I love that piece of Caldwell-Baker, that's what it was built on. That's what it was there for. It was there to help and protect.
Right.
And fiduciary duties, all of our, how do I explain? All of our decisions are supposed to be in the best interests of our client.
Right.
And I love that. And I've been with them for 20 years.
Great.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the state of the market. In my first part of the show, I talked about the numbers for the month. Numbers for the month were a little better than last year at this time, but still a very low recording level. And so we're seeing a drop off, particularly from 2 years ago, during the COVID stretch, of a drop off. Rates are high, low inventory, things are slow at the registry.
So the numbers that you saw in February, would you put them equal to pre-COVID numbers or even lower than that?
Lower than that.
Really?
Lower than that, yeah.
Okay.
Number of recordings. And when the rates went up, the refinancing, dropped off.
Completely.
Completely.
Yeah.
And, people don't realize that years ago, people paid 14, 18%.
My first house was 10.5. We had bragging rights because we had the lowest rate in our group of friends.
But and then people aren't ready for that. But if it comes down later in the spring, we'll have a burst, I think. Problem is, there are a lot of people that haven't wanted to move, and that's been part of the issue.
The uncertainty creates fear, and fear makes us paralyzed. And so we know what we're in, but we don't know what it's going to look like if we decide to move out. And I think that, for the most part, the media gets paid for you to watch and pay attention.
Right.
And we all have that little streak in us that we always pay attention when it's not good,
Right, right.
So I find that a lot of people are paralyzed in decision making. And the rates are, the rates aren't fabulous if you started paying attention 3 years ago, and the rates were, at 3. Some of them were even lower than that.
No, incredible.
So now you're looking at, 7s or 8s, and you're thinking, oh.
Right.
But the reality is, when I started, if you got 6.5%, you had a good rate.
Right.
And so we're not that far off from that, which I would consider more of a normal-ish market. And I think people are starting to understand that and starting to embrace.
Well, tonight, on the day of the taping of the show, we go into spring, the vernal equinox around midnight or something. And we're hopeful that we get into a good spring market, as we always have in the past.
Right.
So what advice would you have for potential sellers as we enter this time period, going from March into April and as we march into spring?
Well, one of the best investments you can ever make on your home is maintenance. Maintaining your home and keeping it up and, keeping the roof up or whatever. That is the best thing that you can do. I'd pick that over pretty kitchen cabinets all day long. The other piece, and I understand, we all watch HGTV. It's not real. I say that to people when I walk in. It's really nice to meet you. We're not going to have your open house, new housewarming party in a half hour. It's not going to happen. I can't do it. And I think we need to keep that in mind, that it's television and it's there, for your enjoyment and, Don't let that scare you. Not every house is magazine ready. And you don't have to have a magazine ready house to sell, especially in this market. Right now, some of what I saw this weekend just makes me shake my head because they didn't do maintenance. And they're still going to get good money. But I think if you're considering selling, your first call should be to somebody who specializes in selling homes, not somebody who specializes in buying them. As I said, as an agent, your fiduciary duties are to your client. So you hire me to sell your home. My duty is to get you the best money I possibly can because I'm in the business of selling homes. Now, somebody who's in the business of buying homes, their job, their focus is to get something at the best price they can. And it's unfortunate. I think some people, again, they become paralyzed and they look around and they think, oh, I'd have to do this and I'd have to do that and I'd have to do this. And you don't. But they're open to somebody who knocks on the door and says, well, I'll give you $5 for your house and you don't have to do anything. You just have to pick up your keys and walk out the door. I'll take care of all the rest. Well, that's, there are some situations where that's really good and helpful. But you have to understand that they do that and they're willing to put in the work. And we've seen flips for years, right? Somebody takes a house, they buy it at less than market value, they put money into it, they redo it, and they resell it. I've done so much of that over the past 20 years. That got me through the really hard years. I did a lot of it. But now I'm seeing people knocking on the doors, and we were talking a little bit earlier about one in particular that really bothers me. I saw a house hit the market, and again, I work with a lot of contractors, and so the house needed, and it was priced under market. So I'm kind of looking at it, and I'm like, all right, the numbers work. It was on the market for $399.
Which is pretty low in this market.
Which is very low in this market. And it had a nice piece of land. It was in one of the towns.
Yeah.
And so I did a little history, and the folks who had been in it for 30, 40 years had just sold it for $285
Wow, that's very low.
the week before.
Wow.
So whoever bought it at $285 turned around, and 1 week later put it on the market.
Without making any changes?
They didn't make a change. They didn't clean it out. They didn't even take the debris off the front lawn.
Wow.
And they put it on the market at $399, and they sold it within 30 days for $415.
Wow.
So that's why I say
That's kind of a unique property though, right?
I've got a half a dozen examples. Not as blatant, but
Yeah, sure.
equally, and that number seems to be 100,000,
Wow.
which is crazy. But that's why I say, if you're contemplating selling a house, and it doesn't have to be next week. You know, I'll get calls from, I got a call from a wonderful gentleman, oh gosh, 2 years ago. And he said, Nancy, I think I'd like to sell. And I said, well, let's just talk about this, you know? So I went to the house, and we talked about it. And, you know, I said, well, if you do this, it's going to get you some more money. If you do that, it's going to get you some more money. But it's been 2 years, and I'm happy to do that, right? And we talk periodically, and he isn't quite ready, you know? But that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we do.
Yeah.
And not, like I said, not everything, I'm not going in and saying, well, you need to replace the kitchen and you need to replace the bath. Most realtors that I know take their fiduciary duties very seriously. And most of us will go in and say, all right, if you walk out the door and we sell it as it is, breakfast on the table, okay? This is what we're gonna get you in the market. Now, if we come through and we do this, maybe we'll do a little bit of clean out, we'll do a little bit of cleaning, we'll do a little, you know, brush up landscaping, neaten things up a bit. Nothing crazy, not a ton of money. Then this is what we are comfortable putting it on the market for. Now, if I came in and I did a gut rehab and I did the whole thing,
Right.
This is it. So ask people who are in the business of selling homes what those three numbers are. And then you have the opportunity to decide where your threshold is. You know, do you want to update the kitchen and go for the third highest price? Or I just hate to see people lose, because for some, especially our older generation, that's their biggest asset.
Of course.
And that's
For
the,
most people, it's the biggest asset.
yep, and that's that chunk of money that's going to get them through the next however many.
Right.
So if I leave you with nothing else, I want people to talk to people who sell houses. That doesn't mean you have to use them.
Yeah.
You know, you can always go to the person who buys houses. That's an option. But at least know what the number is before you go to the person who buys. The other piece, if you are thinking about getting ready, walk out your front door, go across the street, turn around and look at your house and see what other people see. Because in today's market, the first thing we do is we go in and we take pictures, right? We put it online. People look at it online and they go, oh, and they drive by. And they're judging your house from the street. So look at it from the street.
So can I get a quick, I know we want to talk about sellers. Talk to me about a first-time home buyer.
First-time home buyers. I love first-time buyers.
Yeah, I feel very bad for them, you know?
They have a challenge right now. They really do. They're going to open houses and they're standing in line, or they're trying to see a house with 20 people into it. And that's no way to buy a house.
Yeah, right.
It's just not. you know? They're waiving everything under the sun. Again,
Yeah, home inspections, everything, you know?
yeah, with my buyers, I am so hesitant. And I know houses. I've been, like I said, you know, I started off in the construction world, peripheral. I don't know how to swing a hammer. But I understand the concepts and I understand, you know, what to look for. But waiving a home inspection is detrimental. Because you don't know if you have a $500 problem or
Right.
a $5,000
Right,
problem.
right.
What can I say to encourage them? Hang in there. We are going to see inventory loosen up. We are going to see, don't get crazy. But also don't think that you're going to find a bargain, you know?
Right.
If the house goes on the market for $500,000 and you have to elbow your way through the door to get a look at it, know that it's not going to sell for $475. It's going to sell for probably $550.
Well, can you share your contact information with everyone?
Absolutely. Nancy Doyle.
Yeah.
You will know my picture because it looks like a cartoon. It saves me from, you know, owning all my wrinkles.
As I showed to the people working here today.
And you can reach me at 774-250-2221. And that phone goes to both Bo and I. And you can text that number, and it goes to both of us. Or you can go direct to my cell phone at 774-240-0576. My office is at 159 Belmont Street in Easton, right next to Bourne's, across from Stonehill. And I also sit in the Marion office
Okay.
a couple times a
I
week.
was there yesterday morning.
Were you really?
Yeah. Marion Town Hall.
Oh, okay. I was there in the afternoon at the office. Beautiful little office.
Nice
right
little
there
town.
on Front Street. Very
Nice little
pretty.
town, yeah.
Very pretty.
Out of Plymouth County.
Yes,
A lot
part
of
of
people think
Plymouth.
it's Bristol County.
Right? But no, it's not. It's not. So you can reach me anytime. Smoke signals, Google.
Right. All right. Well, thank you very much.
John,
Nancy.
thank you so
Always
much
good-
for
always-
having
always
me.
good to
I
see you.
really appreciate
Yeah.
this. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Anytime.
So again, welcome back to the Register's Report. Nancy Doyle did a great job discussing what is happening out there in the real estate market from a seller's perspective. However, you really need to follow advice of realtors whose boots are on the ground. Nancy did a great job talking about what's going on out there right now, different perspectives of people buying homes and getting ready to sell homes. And we're entering a spring market. We hope we'll turn things around. And in this segment of the show, we do something more lighter in nature. We're going to talk about some of our great Plymouth Colony and Plymouth County history. Holidays for the month were the 10th of March, International Women's Day. St. Patrick's Day was the 17th. Tonight will be the beginning of spring, the spring equinox. Then we get Greek Independence Day on the 25th, and we go into Good Friday and Easter. So let's go into a couple of our Plymouth Colony great stories, because we're still celebrating St. Patrick's Day. John Boyle O'Reilly was a Irishman born in County Meath, Ireland. He joined the British Army, and when he was convicted of supporting the Irish, United Irish, he was sent to Australia, convicted to death, but then sent to Australia to a penal colony. He escaped Australia, and then he became a leader in the Irish community in America, became the editor of the Pilot. He actually purchased property in Hull. A lot of Irish in Boston summited in Hull to take the ferry over, and it was much cooler than it was in Boston. And that house he purchased was a Hunt estate. He later renovated that and built a new one. And the John Boyle O'Reilly property is now the Hull Public Library. He was a very prominent Irishman, particularly in getting along with the Protestant folks at the time. He was a keynote speaker and wrote a poem about the National Monument to the Forefathers in Plymouth. There's a monument in his name in the Fenway section of Boston. Next, a very prominent Irish boxer, John L. Sullivan, the Boston Strong Boy, the first modern heavyweight champion of the world. He was born in Roxbury in 1882. He was born to Irish immigrant parents. And he held titles as a boxer under the modern Queensberry rules in the bare-knuckle London Prize ring rules. He had a 75-round fight win over Jake Kilrain, the last significant bare-knuckle fight in boxing. Nobody really knows the number of fights he had, between 35 and 38, but his only loss came at the hands of Gentleman Jim Corbett in 1892. He never fought after that. He retired to a farm in the town of Abington on Hancock Street, where he lived until his death. And another notable occurrence over the last month, here in Brockton, every year they celebrate the tragic loss of life of firefighters in the Strand Theater fire. It was a 1941 fire. 13 firefighters lost their life, the largest loss of firefighters' life prior to 9/11. And it was a theater on the corner of Main Street in School Street. They thought the fire was out. They went in and the roof collapsed on them and they were killed. But every year there's an event run at City Hall that honors those firefighters. They do the ceremony inside the beautiful City Hall, and they ring a bell as every name who passed away is read. And then there is a beautiful firefighter memorial in City Hall Plaza, dedicated in 2008. And if you haven't been there, I advise you to take a ride over to City Hall and look at that monument to our great public servants and our protectors of all of us. We always do one Plymouth Colony record in these shows since the Plymouth 400, the 400th anniversary of Plymouth Colony. And this one is a 1632 document, not a 1932, 1632 document that was the first purchase and sales agreement recorded in America. Normally there were deeds recorded, but in this case, it was a document that the agreement to sell by Caleb and Joseph Winslow for 26 pounds to be sold at a later date, and it was later sold. And so that document is considered a purchase and sales agreement, just like you would sign today, that gives your intention to sell property. More complicated today, but certainly a first purchase and sales agreement. I want to thank Lorna Green Baker from our office at the Registry of Deeds, along with Christine Richards for getting the images and putting this show together. I want to thank Michelle Hebsche once again for doing this show. And we had a new intern with us on this show, Astrid Moretta. So I want to thank everyone for their help. Hope you had a great St. Patrick's Day, and we'll see you in the spring when we bring on our April show. So thank you very much for having us on this show. Protect your home. For most people, it's your most valuable asset. Thank you.